You are now tuning in to the Going North podcast with your host, best-selling author, professional speaker, and member of the John Maxwell team, Dominic Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday, we're going to hear the voice of a different author sharing their gifts, stories, and expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we bring you some fabulous humans from across the globe. Today is no different. Because we got one heck of a powerhouse for you today, my friends. I got to tell you, it's amazing for those who may work in a library and the shelf, books on the shelf, then you pick up books, and then you pick up one about Zen. You realize, oh, this is freaking cool. And then out of nowhere, 7 or 8 years later, you're talking to the same guy who wrote the book 30 years ago and has a new, even more powerful book out. And this is one of those special occasions. My goodness. This gentleman right here, 10 years as a monk, a corporate head, and a 5D personality, folks. My goodness, 5 dimensions all in one, and a life-changing, well-respected author who's been with folks from all walks of life. And he combined all those life experiences just to give the power of listening and respect to everyone that he meets. So let's give it up for Mr. DBL himself, my man Danny Bruce Levin. How you doing today, sir?
I couldn't be better, thank you. And how can you be bad when you hear your voice? You like just make people happy with that voice.
Woohoo! That's usually the goal. But hey, as with all introductions, they're allowed to be 50 years long. So mind filling in any cavities or missing things about my man Danny here?
Uh, Probably we're all missing something, but here's the beautiful thing, Dom. It's the spaces always between the words where the power lies. And so even if you had everything down, the space between the words would be what we need to go. And what does the space between the words mean? For me, words are what we use to inspire people. Words are what we use to get the mind thinking and to occupy the mind and make the mind happy so it stays in the conversation. But a real conversation, what really happens in a real conversation with people that really know what they're doing is it goes beyond the words. The space between the words is the vibration, is the feeling, is the energy that's coming to us beyond the words of the mind. And so when I speak to people in general, what happens is my words have to be charming enough and intelligent enough and persuasive enough to capture the mind so the mind doesn't get scared and doesn't say what the heck's going on, because then what can happen, and I want to ask your listeners to experiment with it if they can feel it in this podcast. Then what happens is I get a chance to listen to the hearts and souls of people, and I get a chance to really respond to the hearts and souls. And so you're going to be their messenger because you're the only one that I'm talking to right now. But you're going to be the messenger to the people that listen to this podcast, so that what I want to ask them is, through the resonance of voice, through the feeling of energy that's coming through, does their heart and soul feel any different? Take an inventory now of where you're at, and allow my words to just to intoxicate your mind, to keep your mind happy, and then allow your heart to just feel what's going on. Allow your soul to be touched through the vibration of what we're exchanging here, and feel it, hear it, smell it, taste it, experience it, and see what happens.
That's right. With all 5 eyes, even if you have to.
Yeah. One of the things that I do, Dom, which is what you can probably already tell, is I disrupt the way people think. And I believe in there's an organization that trains coaches or works with CEOs of companies, and they have CEOs lead a groups of other CEOs of companies. The organization is called Vistage, and they reached out to me to be part of what they were doing. I chose not to, but they have a wonderful saying that they use They say when people come to us, they think that we're going to answer their questions. But instead, what we do is we question their answers. And I think that that's the most valuable thing a person can do. When we look at the things that we believe and we look at the things that we feel and we look at the thoughts that we think, do you have the safety net? Do you have the comfort? Do you trust the people around you that they can ask you, what would happen if what you believe isn't true? What would that space open up for you? What possibilities would suddenly exist? Because what happens is we always see the world the way we see the world, but we have very little chance to see the world differently. And when we get a chance to see the world differently in companies, that's called innovation. In relationships, that's called change. And in the world that we live in, we need change and innovation, not because we have to fix each other, but there's something in the process of just coming together with two people coming together like pieces in a mosaic. We're better together. We're stronger together. There are parts of us that have to give up ourselves to allow another piece to connect to us. And in that giving up of ourselves, what belongs to us is what remains. And what we don't and where we don't belong ends up falling away. So we have to ask ourselves, are we where we belong right now? Are we doing what we belong to be doing? Or are the people around us the people that we belong with? Is where we're working the place where we belong in our work? And if not, what why stay there? Why not try and adapt it or change it or modify it? Or you don't have to leave your workplace or your family or any of that, but the person that has to change is the one is realizing there's a change is necessary. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense indeed. Reminds you of quarters and nickels.
Courtesan Nichols.
Yeah, perfect sense.
What is Courtesan Nichols?
Yeah, bad joke.
Okay.
But yes, indeed, and it's so darn powerful because I actually heard of that company before Vistage, and funny enough, one of my mentors was actually a part of them for a short time, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and funny enough, I guess he probably left for the same reasons because him himself, he would always question my answers, and I feel like what you said is so true. A lot of us feel like we're searching for answers, but maybe the answers lie in just us maybe taking some time to think and asking more questions.
Yeah, I think in order to be able to hear answers, we have to learn how to listen. And my work really now is around the revolution to get people to listen and to help people to listen. Because Don, I've had a beautifully strange life. I've had opportunities to be with the richest people in the world, to sit at their dining room tables and meet their sons and their daughters and their parents. I've been friends with them and they've been kind enough to share their counsel with me and even kinder to ask my counsel for them. I've sat with some of the top religious leaders in the world and some of the top self help people in the world. Again, not in their audiences, but in their living rooms and dining rooms. I've met with them and talked with them, and we've come together as friends. And I've also had the incredibly beautiful experience of sitting on street corners with the poorest of the poor. And they've been kind enough to ask my counsel and kind enough to give me theirs. And one of the things that I realized, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what religion you practice, what position you are in life, what your profession is or what your profession isn't. It doesn't matter what color your skin or what border you live behind, how much money you make, or how big your house is, or how nice your cardboard box is. All of us want exactly the same thing. We want to be loved and accepted. We want to be listened to and heard. We want to be acknowledged for what we believe and validated for believing it. In the 65 years that I've been alive, Don, not one person has ever said to me, Danny, it's important you believe just like me. It's important that you think just like me. It's important that you do things just like me. They might have said it, but they never really meant it, because once I said to them, I totally accept your right to believe what you believe, but I want you to accept my right to believe what I believe too. But I love you. I accept you. I understand that that's what you believe. I acknowledge you for believing it. And when you can do that, if that's what everybody needs, Dom, all of us can do that. I realized I could do that easily for people. What's so hard about loving and accepting another person? What's so hard about being real and vulnerable and alive with another person, so that they know that they have the safety in the midst of the presence that we cast together, to be themselves and to open up? It's all any of us want.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So true and so powerful. And heck, even you're right. It's like no matter how many people you talk to, no one's really gonna really say verbatim that they want you to believe just like them,
Yeah,
exactly like them.
yeah, yeah. And yet we think they do. And yet we think that that's what's happening. If you look at the political situation in America today, it sure seems like each side is saying, I want you to believe like me. But it's only because nobody's listening to one another. If we were to listen to one another and just hear what each other says, give each other the time and the decency to say, we got it. We know that's what you want. We want something similar too. We may disagree on how we get there, but let's come together instead of standing on opposite sides, and try and figure out, how do we achieve what we want versus how do we do it your way or my way? Who cares which way it happens? When the sides of a situation walk towards the middle, there's only one thing that can be done: the middle way. And that middle way is the way of listening. That middle way is the way of understanding. That middle way is the way of love over fear. And it's so easy to do that. It really is.
If only more people understood that. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We have a voice, and I have a voice, you have a voice. And part of the reason why I'm doing the 50 conversations with 50 strangers, which I was so happy to have you on, is to give people a chance to say what it is they want to say. Because in those conversations that I'm having, I'm meeting with 50 different strangers and having 50 different conversations, people that I have no idea existed 5 minutes before I got on the phone with them. And what I'm finding is there's so much commonality. There's so much a sense of what we do is we are all part of something greater. Narcissistically, I call that the mosaic. We're all pieces in a mosaic. And when we come together, our piece, our individual piece, may or may not be anything worthwhile. Sure, it's beautiful, it's good, it's strong, it's powerful. But when you put that one little piece with all the other pieces of the mosaic, my God, the artistry is so magnificent. What we can do together is so much more than what we can do separate. We all grew up with the saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Where the heck did we start to live in this divided world, and why? It's time for us to slow the momentum of this world down and say, hold it, is that really what you want? And I asked people on that show, are you a leader or a follower? And a lot of people say they're leaders. But I wonder if if our leaders even know how to lead. Because you'll watch, like, just take politically, you can see what happens. Whether you believe in Trump or don't believe in Trump, there's a strong camp in both places that support you. But do you have the strength of character to stand up to whichever side you're on and say, I don't believe you're acting appropriately in this situation? Whether you're a Democrat who is just bashing the heck out of Trump and not giving him any sense of doing anything right, or a Republican that won't admit that he did any that he's crass and crude, and he's making some big mistakes. He's done some great things. Democrats should acknowledge that. But then there's some things he hasn't done well, and they should ask for change on those things. Republicans should see that the same thing. He's done some great things, but he's done some asinine things. And they should stand up and say, we don't agree with you when you do this. Who makes a statement like, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and everybody would still love me? You got to stand up against those types of behaviors, but you got to stand up against them as the Democratic as a Democrat within a Democratic party also, we're not standing up for what's right. And so we have a bunch of leaders who are tending to be followers and nobody's leading the boat. That's a boat that's destined for failure. It's time for real leaders to step up, real people to step up, that aren't just reactive leaders, that are but rather are active leaders, that know what's the right thing to do and do it, but bring along all of humanity behind them, because all of us want to do the right thing, not just one party or another, not just one color or another. It's abysmal the way the white people have treated the black people. It's abysmal. It's time for it to stop. And for white people to say, well, why are they protesting so much? Because you would do the same thing too if you were treated the way they were treated. It's ridiculous that this is going on. This is beneath who we are as human beings. And we can let people be themselves, but we have to stand up and have the courage to stand up and be ourselves amidst that world. Like, if we're going to let everybody, I have a strong belief system. You have every right to believe whatever is you believe, but I also have a right to my beliefs. And I also have a right to stand up and say what I believe, not because I want to piss people off or make people mad, but because it's time to rally people around what we really do believe. In a mosaic, you watch the way pieces connect. Sometimes they just connect one corner to the other corner. That means most of what one piece believes and most of what the other piece believes, they don't believe. The other one doesn't believe. But it's enough to make the mosaic whole to just have one tiny corner of each piece connect to one tiny corner of the other piece. And when that happens, there's connection. If we would start to focus on the places where we are alike rather than on the places we're different. On my show, 50 strangers said to me, almost in unison, every single one of them, I believe we're more connected than we are separate. And yet we live as if we're more separate than we are connected. Why?
So many things to unpack for what you just said, my man. So many
Yeah.
things to unpack.
Yeah. Well, we're going on a long trip, my friend. You might as well unpack them and have them become available to you.
And it's not even Christmas yet.
There you go. There you go.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, you're so darn right about that, because it's really all about human decency and just valuing one another as fellow human beings, as opposed to focusing on one party versus another. When at the end of the day, we all should be focusing on how can we be better as a people as a whole.
We are one race, my friend. We're called the human race. We are one people, united under God. We are one nation, indivisible. Where in the world do we have people that are starting to separate us like we're being separated? Nothing in anything we believe in tells us differently. And yet we have gotten on a train where the momentum is taking us away from each other. And you know why it is? I think it's because we don't listen to each other. I think it's because we talk too much and we don't listen enough. And so part of the revolution of listening comes from my book, The Mosaic. The Mosaic is a story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults, where are my parents? The adults tell him they're in a place called heaven. And so he sets out in search of this place called heaven. And he thinks he's going to meet these religious leaders and spiritual people that are going to tell him where heaven is and guide him to the heaven. Instead, he meets common, ordinary people. He meets a blind woman and a homeless man, a road worker and a trash man, a street artist and a gardener, and a waitress and a flower girl. And he says to himself, I wonder why I'm meeting these people. What can they show me about heaven? These are common, ordinary people. What are they going to do? And then he says, but I'm here with them. I might as well listen to what they have to say. And Dom, in every single case, bar none, when he sits with them for a few minutes, the person he sees, after getting to know them a little bit, is 1,000 times different than the person he first walked up to. He didn't see the people the way they were, he saw the people the way he was. And when he realized, I don't see things the way they are, I see things the way I am, he wondered, how can I get out of my own way and see the world the way it is? And at that moment, he looked over to the right and he saw the monk unzipping the sky and inviting him to walk into a parallel reality where he met the keeper of the Mosaic, the wise one. And I'll leave the story there because hopefully someone will pick up the book. It's The Mosaic on Amazon.com, or you can get it on my websites, themosaiconline.com or danielbrucelevin.com. Read the book, not because I want you to buy my book. I want you to read the book because I want it to help you change the way you see the world. If you change the way you see the world you see will change. That was said by Wayne Dyer.
Well said indeed, and definitely right about your book, man, because got there about halfway through the book last night, and it was one heck of a powerful story so far. And heck, even funny enough, I'm not sure if it was between the street artist or the blind woman, but those two chapters really stuck out to me so far.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Tell me what you like about the book in general.
Well, funny enough, I kind of see a bit of myself in the 13-year-old boy. That's probably
Yeah.
the main part of it, is because it's so sad. It's like the way it started off and losing his parents 2 years after each other on the same day, no less, and the boy going to work and heck, even going down and traveling and meeting all these wonderful, ordinary people that really helped him have an extraordinary experience spiritually and mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a simple little story. And yet if you sit with it, I guarantee you it'll change your perception of the way you see life. And for the listeners now, just to ask themselves, what would happen if the way I see life isn't the way life is? What might be possible? What would change if I could see life differently? How would my beliefs change? How would the thoughts change? How would my limiting beliefs change? What would I think about myself and what would I think about the world around me? How would my career change? I had this amazing realization just over the last few days, Dom. And it was about, for me, it came from rereading The Road Worker. And in the road worker, his job is to come and fix potholes. And on every street, no matter how beautiful or how simple, eventually over time, a road will develop a pothole. And so the road worker's called when the pothole gets big enough. The road worker's called to patch up the pothole. And in this particular case, what he does is before he patches it up, he watches how people respond to the pothole. And he notices there's 4 different types of people. The first one notices the pothole from far away and drives right around it and goes on with life and never encounters the pothole at all. He just sees it, drives around it, and goes on with his way. The second one drives into the pothole and ruins the front end of his car. And he gets the car out of the pothole, drives it to the shop, gets it fixed, and pretty soon, except for a few dollars, the car's as good as new. The third one drives into the pothole, ruins the front end of his car, and drives it around hoping no one will notice that his whole front end of his car is ruined, but everybody notices. And he likes to believe that nobody can see his problems or his flaws. But the front end of the car is destroyed. Everybody sees it. But the fourth one is the one that interests me most and interests him the most. It's the one that drives into the pothole and forgets that the road there was so beautiful and the road just a few millimeters ahead of him is glorious again and beautiful. And he gets stuck in the pothole. and he doesn't know how to get out of the pothole. So the pothole becomes his life now. And he sinks deeper and deeper into it the more he tries to get out. Well, when the road worker comes, he has to fix the pothole. So he needs that car and that person to get out of it. He can't fix it with the car in the pothole. It's, and so he just says to him, "Let me help you out." And the people and the normal response is, "I can't get out. I don't know how to do it. I've been in this for so long. This has become my reality." We start to believe that the pothole is our reality. And when people come to us to try and help us get out, "Oh no, we're okay. We're doing fine." And they're sinking deeper and deeper into this pothole. Well, the road worker has no other choice but to pull them out because he has to fix the hole and to continue on with his job. How do you respond in your pothole? Are you stuck in there? If you are, call the road worker. You know him now. Tell him, "I need your help to get out of here." Are you the person that drives in the pothole, ruins your front end, and doesn't hopes no one will notice when everybody notices? How do you deal with the pothole? Simple question. What I like about my book is there's no religion in it. There's no spirituality in it. There's just the simple beauty of ordinary stories about ordinary people. And when you realize that ordinary, common people is what makes the life that we live exquisite and beautiful and spiritual and holy, there's a sacredness in every single one of us. You no longer can sit on a street corner and yell across the street at another person sitting on the other street corner yelling at you. It just doesn't make sense anymore.
Feel like those birds chirping came at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. I hire them to come right around the right time. No, I'm kidding.
Yes,
But it's all simple, isn't it, Dom? It doesn't. This isn't hard. We think it's all so hard, but it's also simple. We try and make it hard so we don't have to do anything, but it's really simple. Can I tell you a story about my daughter?
of course you can.
As I told you, I've had the opportunity to sit with some of the richest people in the world, some of the most best motivational speakers and charismatic leaders. And I've learned so much from them, and I've been so thankful for them. But I think the person that's taught me the most is my 30-year-old daughter right now. And it just so happens my 30-year-old daughter is developmentally delayed. And she can't speak like you and I speak. When she tries to talk, people don't understand her because the clarity of her words is just not understandable. But I've been with her a long time, so I understand more than most people. And now, quite frankly, she's getting better. And she's speaking a little bit more clearly, and a few more people are understanding her. But in the beginning, nobody understood her. And she counted on me, Dom, to understand her, to know what she was saying, and to help her. And we're not talking about help. We're talking about, "I'm hungry. I'm tired. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to go for a walk. I need to exercise or lay down and rest." She's simple, basic human needs. She wasn't able to express herself well with. And most of the time, then I got to the place where I understood her, Dom, but sometimes I didn't. And when I didn't understand her, she would raise her voice and try and say it louder. Well, most of the time, she was just saying unclear words louder now, and I didn't understand them before. I didn't understand them again. Every once in a while, by her increasing her volume, it changed the way she pronounced it a little bit, and I got it, but not often. So when she started talking and I couldn't understand her, and when she said it louder and I couldn't understand her, then what she would do is tantrum. And she would go off in the middle of a meeting that I was in. She would go off when we were sitting at the dining room table. We would be out walking on the streets of the town. We would be at the beach. We would be in the car driving someplace. We would be at a friend's house. We would be in a restaurant. And all of a sudden, she would just go in tantrum. And when she tantrumed and I still didn't understand her, she would come running at me and try and attack me. She would try and rip my shirt, grab my shirt and rip it or bite me. And Dom, I'd like to say to you that I'm an intelligent man and I knew what to do, but this went on for 15 years and I really had no idea what to do. Until I gave up at the last minute and I said, Elisa, I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried everything with you. And I just don't know how to understand you. You have to understand, I'm trying more than anything to understand what you want to say. I love you more than anything that anybody that I've ever loved. But I just don't understand your words. Will you try and talk to me in a way that doesn't use your words? And her rage turned into a smile that melted my heart. And I said, something's coming. What's that sound? What are you smiling for? And she said, I am, Daddy. And I said, you are what? How are you doing that? And she put her index finger to the side of her head. And she made me understand that she was putting thoughts into my head. And I said, you little son of a gun, are you putting thoughts into my head? And she started laughing like you're laughing, but her laugh had all of the burden of all of the years that she had tried to express herself and the freedom that comes when she finally was understood. And her laugh became this outrageous, contagious laugh. And I just started laughing with her. And we laughed for what must have been 10 minutes. And we just, as soon as she would stop, I would continue. And she would get caught in the contagiousness of my laugh. And then she would do the same thing to me. From that moment on, Don, she's never raised her voice. She's never tantrumed. And she's never tried to attack. If that were the end of the story, that would have been a beautiful story for me. That would have been all I needed because I now have a way to understand my daughter. But what I realized, Don, is that every single person that I know, every single company that I work with, every single government official that I work with, and government leadership, every single military person I work with, every school that I go in and do work with, all of them follow the same pattern. When people speak and they don't get heard, they yell. When they yell and they don't get heard, they create havoc. They create a tantrum. They tantrum. They create a scene. They try and make things disrupt the way things are happening. They stand up and they protest. They march. They loot. They do whatever they do. And when they're not heard still, then they'll destroy. And they should do that because they need to find some way to get heard. But they don't have to do that if we would take the time to just listen. If we would take the time to listen to what they say and find a way to understand them when we can't understand them, to say, I know you're trying to say something to me, but I just don't understand it. Can you try and do it to me in another way? Can you try and say it another way? Can you try and say it without words? If we could hear people, they would never need to yell. They would never need to disrupt. They would never need to destroy. Look at what's happening in our country right now. Nobody's listening. You listen to political people debate, they don't debate. They say three words and then the other one talks over them. No one's listening, Dom. And it's time for us to start this process of bringing the sides to the middle by just listening to each other.
Uh, Beautiful right there. So I guess that wonderful moment with your daughter is that what led to this being your year of listening?
Yes. It's between her story to me that happened about 5 years ago and a story that I tell about a homeless man that I met in San Diego and the intoxication of this book called The Mosaic. Those three things have all created a triad of opportunity for me to learn how to listen better. And I don't know if we have time. Do you have time for one more story?
Of course.
So again, I love going back to the fact that I've had this opportunity to be with all these different people. And most people would take from that opportunity, they would inspire you with stories of the people that were successful and the people at the top of the game. I would like to share a story with you that happened when I was sitting with one of the poorest people I've ever met on a beat up cardboard box on a cold day in San Diego, which allegedly is not a cold day anywhere else in the world, but it's a cold day in San Diego. And I was just walking down the street and I just felt this need to sit down and get away from the crowd and the throngs of people because I'm a little bit of an empath and I was feeling the people as I was going by. And I just couldn't take all the things that I was feeling. So I just wanted to go to a corner and sit down. And I started walking to the corner of the street, and there was a homeless man sitting there. And as I came, he said, "You can't come here. This is my corner." I said, "I'm sorry. I'm not going to take your corner away from you. I just need some place to sit." And he said, "This is my money. You can't have my money. I'm not going to give you my money." And I said, "I'll tell you what, my friend, how much do you make in the 10 minutes that I'm going to be here, 15 minutes?" He said, "Oh, I make probably $5." I said, I'll get, before I leave, I'll give you $50 just for the opportunity to sit here. Is that okay?" He said, "Yeah, sure. That'd be fine." And then, and then I sat with him, but he was still very guarded and very protected. And it took about 30 or 45 minutes for him to open up. And finally, we started talking to each other. And finally, he started to share with me his life. And I asked him, his name was Corey. And I said, "Corey, you see people passing you all day, all night. You see them passing you sometimes 5, 6, 7 times a day because you see them walk by you that many times. Have you ever wanted to just stop them for a minute and just say something to them?" He said, "Yeah, man, all the time." I said, What would you say to them if you could stop them right now? What would you say?" And he said, "Danny," without missing a beat, he said, "Danny, I would ask them to go up to someone they don't know and just ask them how they are. Not with a thought of fixing them or changing them or helping them or doing something for them, just with a thought of listening to them." And I said, "Corey, that's such a beautiful thing to say, but why that? Like, you're homeless. Why wouldn't you ask them to donate food to the poor or build shelters or do something like that?" He said, "Danny, because listening is the more important than all that." And I said, "Explain that to me." He said, "The job of being homeless is a hard job, Danny. People treat you as if you're a thing. They don't treat you as a person. And you can do all sorts of things to a thing. People would walk by and they would punch me, or they would walk by, they would kick me, they'd turn my hat over and try and steal my money. Sometimes they would spit on me. I even had people urinate on me. And one day, all of it happened, and it was a terrible day. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? I'm bringing no honor to myself in this, doing what I'm doing. I'm pissing people off around me right and left. I have no purpose here. There's no reason for me to be on this planet. And he decided that night he was going to go around the corner because around the corner there was a dark street where nobody walked. And he said to himself, "I'm going to take my life tonight and just get out of this pain." Not 2 minutes after he said that, a man came up to him and said, "How are you, brother?" and put his hand on his shoulder. And Corey told me tears started to stream from his eyes. He couldn't hold them in any longer. And the man saw his tears and sat down next to him and hugged him. And he said, "What's going on, brother?" Corey looked at me and he said, "Danny, it only took about 10 minutes. But in those 10 minutes, I was able to bare my soul to him. And after those 10 minutes, I said to myself, I can't go and kill myself tonight. This man who didn't even know me took 10 minutes out of the course of his life to ask me how I'm doing. Somebody cares about me. I can't kill myself tonight." And he said, I wish that man would have come again because he has no idea that by doing that simple act of kindness, he saved my life that day. Dom, here's the other interesting thing. I haven't ever seen Corey again.
Mm.
But Corey has no idea that on every podcast that I'm on every workshop that I do, on every seminar that I give, on every radio show or TV show I go on, in every lecture that I give, I close with Corey's story. I've told his story now to millions of people. And here's the thing. Every time I've told his story, I've asked what he asked me to do, which is say to people who are listening, why not take 10 minutes out of the course of your lifetime and go up to someone you don't know and just ask them, how are you doing today? What might happen if we did that? That story is what inspired me to do 50 conversations with 50 strangers. And people have come out of the woodwork to have those conversations. Remember, as I said early on, we all want to be loved and accepted. We all want to be listened to and heard. We all want to be acknowledged for what we believe and validated for believing it. So when I think about who are the most important people in my life, what are the most important situations in my life, it comes down to my developmentally delayed daughter, a homeless man, and a simple story called the Mosaic.
Woo! My goodness. Standing ovation for that one. Oh my goodness. Man, man,
Thank you.
man. Almost should have tear on that one, man, because it's man. Woo, man. And
Yeah.
and that's the power of listening, man. It's a lot of people just want those 10 minutes. And it doesn't have to be an everyday thing. I mean, it would be better if it was, but just at least once in your lifetime.
Yeah, just start out with once in a lifetime. I have a feeling when you do it once, there'll be an intoxication that happens to you, and you'll want to just keep doing it because you'll see how much you grow, how much someone feels free enough in the space that you hold for them to be able to tell you honestly what they feel and how beautiful that is.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. From open flames to open skies, all the beauty.
Hmm.
It's almost like I went to a rabbi's temple and learned today.
Good. Good. I guess that's good. Somebody, it's time. It's Dom. It's just time. It's time for us to put all the bullshit down. It's time for us to take all the fear that we have of each other and just let it rest because all of us are so similar. And in the 50 conversations with 50 strangers, I ask a lightning round and I say to them, do you believe we're more different than we are alike or more alike than we are different? And I don't know if everyone answered the same, but most people answered the same. And that was that we're more alike than we are different. They also answered that most of the people don't feel like they fit into this world, don't feel like they belong in this world. They feel like they're different than the world around them. And so, when will we realize one person said it so beautifully. She said, I fit in. But that's only because it's a world of misfits and none of us fit in. And I said, I love that. I love that. But when will we realize that all our fear of wanting to try and fit into this world that nobody fits into, that we would be better stayed to get together with people that don't fit in either and just allow them the space to fit into our reality? If you look at a mosaic, so many of the pieces are broken and some of them are whole, some of them are big, some of them are small, but none of them are what they used to be. They used to be part of some beautiful piece of statue or vase or some, frame of some sort. But now in their brokenness, they come together and they become this beautiful, beautiful artistry. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to come together.
That's right. Just like some peanut butter and jelly, just come together.
There you go. Or maybe like, Paul McCartney, come together over me right now, like the Beatles, right?
There we
But
go.
we
Classic
can
song right there.
we can do it with peanut butter and jelly too. I don't mind.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And before you make a run forward, just got one final question for you.
I'm
That
trying
is,
to make a run for it, brother. Here, I'm going. No, I'm teasing you. Go ahead. I'm here for you. I won't go. I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay for my one question from my brother.
oh, I love your sense of humor. But yes,
Hmm?
sir. So if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but this time in the current year, and heck, even with no pandemic, what advice would you give to yourself besides listening?
Um, hmm. What's coming to me right now is don't be afraid. There's all of us have such a beautiful, beautiful work to do in this world. All of us have something so vital and so important that the world needs us to do it. And it feels to me so much of my life I've watched other people who have done it. I ran I was the director of business development at a company called Hay House. And I watched a lot of these beautiful authors come to us as such beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people. And the more well known they got, sometimes they became really big assholes. And they started to believe the press clippings of all the people saying what they are, and it's really hard not to. I would watch people give a talk to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people and have all those people come up to them and tell them how great they are. And they are that great. But they forgot that they were just a bozo on the bus, just like the rest of us. And pretty soon they started wanting only green M&Ms in the green room. And if there was another color, they would get all irate and mad and yell at us. And I thought, God, why? Like, what happened to you? I remember speaking to one person, and he said, and I told him how many people had fallen like that, and that I perceived how many people had fallen into this pit of believing what people say about them and not knowing who they actually are, the good, the bad, the ugly. And he said to me, will you promise me if you ever get like that, you'll bend me over and kick me in the butt? And I said, really? And he said, really, I never want to be like that. And I said, how serious are you? He said, Danny, I'm dead serious. I said, bend over then. Unfortunately, he didn't laugh. He got really mad, and we didn't talk to each other for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But he was a good man. And when he found out my wife got sick with cancer and had a very bad cancer, he called me up and he said, I'm so sorry. What you said to me was so true all those years back. How can I help you now? And I said, that's so kind of you to come back. I know you were hurt by what I said, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I meant it out of love for you. He said, Danny, I know, and you had to do it, and I'm so happy you did. How can I help you now? And he was a healer, and for a few minutes, he allowed my wife to experience a quiet and a freedom from her pain that she never had. in those last 2.5, 3 years. And it was beautiful to watch. And she took advantage of it. We went on a little trip together. But she was in blood curdling, screaming pain 45 minutes every 45 minutes, all day, all night, except for these few days when he gave us the blessing to let us go away and not have any pain at all. How does that happen? Like, how does that even happen? So, what the Mosaic has taught me, in addition to the world that I see, is there's so much about this world that we just don't know. What we see is definitely not what is. Start asking yourself, what would I see if I could see what I don't see? How would that change my life? And look for it, because it wants to be seen.
You just got done listening to another powerful, power-packed episode of the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed what you heard. You made it all the way to the end. You get to hear all sorts of goodness. I was the best, but you just got done hearing some goodness. Go check out the guest stuff. It's all in the show notes on the website, donbrightman.com, and also reach out to those that you've just heard as well. And keep rocking it, because you yourself are phenomenal for making it this far. And keep going north.